I'm here with the Shaper Origin CNC router, my favorite tool. I've had it for 4 years. And in those 4 years, I think I've made every mistake in the book. I'm going to show you 10 nasty mistakes that'll help you to avoid those mistakes. As part of that, I'm going to show you a little mental checklist I developed to go through before any critical cuts. My one warning is that my mental checklist comes with sort of a goofy mnemonic device, so you'll see that if you stick around. So let's go into the 10 mistakes. I'm going to put them into two categories. One is setup mistakes, that'll be 4 of those, and then 6 will be cutting mistakes. Setup mistakes, the first one is the wrong export settings. The Shaper Origin uses something called scalable vector graphics. You've got to send a scalable vector graphic to the Shaper Origin in order to have it make your cut. And so when you're in your computer design program, you design something nice, you've got to export the file as an SVG. If you use the default export settings, the Shaper Origin might misinterpret the size of your project. For instance, I just made, this is an example, a 1 inch by 1 inch square, exported it using the correct settings, and it came out 1 inch by 1 inch, and I exported it using the default settings, and it came out about 1.25 inches by 1.25 inches. It's really easy to avoid. The Shaper Origin support pages have a page that shows the correct export settings for all of the major design software. You just have to look that up. There's a link in the description to that page. First time you export, just copy the right settings down and save it as a preset. Next thing is taping errors. Shaper Origin orients itself by looking at these little things called shaper tape. They look like little dominoes. It's not hard to work with this stuff, but there are some rules. All of the tape you use has to be on a single plane. It's okay if the workpiece is on a different plane than the tape. That's not a problem at all. In fact, it's pretty common. But if you have tape on this plane and tape on this plane, you're going to get an error. Another issue you may run into is not using enough tape. There's a really good page on the Shaper Origin user forum. There's a link to that in the description where one of the official Shaper Origin guys comes on the user forum and gives a really nice explanation about some taping strategies to get a better result, especially on big pieces. So just look at that one to get some taping strategies. The last tape error I'm going to cover is tape movement. If the tape moves a little bit, you're going to get an error on the Shaper Origin. And even like a little flap of tape like that, even if it's just one little part of your whole tape project, the Shaper Origin is going to pick that up and give you a tape movement error. Sometimes if it really doesn't want to stick, if you just tear it off halfway, that's fine, because Shaper Origin will not recognize part of a tape as being valid at all. It'll just ignore it. The other thing you can do is get just some clear packing tape and put clear packing tape on it, and the Shaper Origin will see right through that. That works fine. That'll hold things down. So I'm next going to cover the failure to hold the piece securely. Double-sided tape is a pretty common hold-down method. That's because clamps are really hard to use because they often interfere with the movement of the Shaper Origin. One thing that helps hold double-sided tape in place a little bit more firmly is just give it a nice whack with a mallet. Now, if you do that on the workstation, this is an adjustable shelf, and you're going to have to readjust the shelf after you gave it a nice whack like that. Even if you have double-sided tape under a small piece, maybe the tape missed a part of the piece or something like that, so it's not really secure. Well, you can actually put some of this packing tape over it, and you can sort of do that strategically, that maybe you cut around 3/4 of the piece, it's still connected. Take the packing tape, this clear packing tape, and put that on the part that's already been cut out, and then go finish the rest, and the packing tape will help hold that little piece in place. And then the other thing I've done on big pieces, right? I'll have a big piece maybe on this workbench. If you've got spaces on it, you can just use maybe some flathead screws and just screw it down, as long as they're not in a spot that you're going to be cutting, and if the flathead screw is at or below the surface so it doesn't interfere the Shaper Origin moving around, that can be a great solution for bigger pieces. All right, I've saved my most painful setup error, personally painful setup error, for last, and that is using the wrong bit size when you're setting up a grid. So on the Shaper Origin, you can drop a bit down to where you can probe the sides of a workpiece and set up a really nice accurate grid. You can place your design, with very precise measurements based on that grid. To use it, you've got to tell the Shaper Origin what your bit diameter is. And you're also permitted to tell the Shaper Origin what grid size you should use. The problem comes, when you see it on the screen and you get the two confused, and you've actually got a 1/4" bit in your machine, and you think you're telling it to use a 1/4" bit, but you're really telling it to make a 1/4" grid, and it thinks you're using a 1/2" bit. If that happens to you, now your grid is off by a 1/4 inch. That happened to be, very unfortunately, on a really big project I have up in my office, these cabinet doors with a big inlay on them, and so the cabinet doors are slightly the wrong size, and so I get reminded of this thing every day. Now we're moving on to cutting errors. And as we go through these cutting errors, there's 6 of them. I'm going to develop that goofy mental checklist for you to use to, when you're making a critical cut. So the first one is specifying the wrong bit size. Shape or Origin has no way of knowing the diameter of the bit that's down in the front of it. You have to tell it correctly. So for our little mental checklist, I'm going to use a capital B and a small I, B, for the bit size. Number 2 is forgetting to tighten the collet and the spindle. When you change bits on the Shape or Origin, you've got to undo the spindle and take it out of the machine, right? And then you've got to undo the collet so you can change the bit. And that's all fine. So, let's pretend this is a new bit. I put a new bit in there, blah, blah, blah. And I forget to tighten it with the wrench. And then to make matters worse, I put it in there because I'm in a hurry and I forget to tighten the spindle. Well, you can tell what's going to happen. This is just going to ride up and down when it tries to make the cut. It's going to be the wrong cut size. If the collet's really loose, that's probably even worse. It's going to be all rough in there because the bit's not held tightly, and it's potentially even dangerous. So don't forget to tighten the spindle and the collet. Failure to tighten, we're going to use a T on our little mental checklist. All right, then on to the next one, forgetting to Z-touch. When you're changing a bit, the Shape or Origin doesn't know the length of the bit and it doesn't know how far you've stuck it into the collet, so you've got to do something called a Z-touch, so it can go down and just lower that bit until it senses that it has touched a surface, and then it'll know that that's 0. Easy to do. If you forget to do it, you'll get the wrong depth of cut. Or if your cut's too deep, maybe your workpiece is ruined. Our next letter on the mental checklist is a Z for Z-touch. So now we're up to B-I-T-Z. We've had the misspelled word bites. Okay, next one, cut type. Okay, the Shape or Origin has 4 cut types. It's got an inside cut, it's got an outside cut, it's got an online cut, and then it's got a pocket cut. Sometimes, in bad situations, like when you're tired or temporarily stupid, it's easy to get confused between inside cuts and outside cuts. If you use the wrong cut type, again, it's likely to lead to ruining your work. Okay, so the cut type in our mental checklist is going to be a C. So now we're up to bite C. Next one is offsets. Shape or Origin lets you do an offset, so you can either go not quite up to the line you're cutting, you can cut a little bit short with a positive offset, or you can use a negative offset, and that'll actually put you a little bit over the line. Make sure that you've correctly identified whether it's a positive offset or a negative offset. So that's O. Now we're up to bites Co. All right, my last cutting error for our little mental checklist is depth. You've got to tell the Shape or Origin how deep you want things to cut. That can be programmed into the file sometimes, but you can override it, and if you tell it too deep of a cut, again, you've probably ruined your workpiece. So now here's our goofy mental checklist. We've got bites cod. So that's the best I could come up with. If you're sitting there ready for a critical cut, you can tell yourself, bite cod, bites of cod. If you've got a better one, I wish you'd leave it in the comments. Would appreciate likes and subscriptions. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope to see you back. Thanks. Bye.